Let's talk about inflation today. So if you want to be a leader in this time of transition of your own life, the life of your loved ones, and possibly even of things as they unfold in the world, you will have to understand economy and the macroeconomy. And one of those obscure topics that most people unfortunately don't quite understand is inflation. Inflation is now on everybody's lips because, of course, we have a lot of it. We haven't had inflationary periods like the ones we have now since the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s. And it's really starting to make a dent in your economy. You may feel stressed by the ravages of inflation on our economy right now. And I'm making these videos in order to awaken your intrinsic heroic impulse for being a lion in this time, for being a steward of your family, for your wife, your children, but also to be a steward of the new world, the new kingdom that I believe is emerging here on planet Earth as corruption and evil and all things that have bothered us and made us suffer for way too long, as that is being unearthed, exposed, and hopefully purged. You can be part of that. And today we're going to have a conversation about inflation, what it is, and how you can position yourself in order to not be destroyed by it, but rather possibly actually profit from it. So let's dive in. If you are like most of us, you have just come to take it for granted that things get more expensive every year. Hopefully your wages, the amount of money that you have to your name, also increases so that your purchasing power remains the same or that it increases. But over the last several years, that is not the case for most people. And the middle class is starting to break down. More and more people are becoming poor. And in Norway, where I'm from, I'm actually visiting Norway now. I normally live in Sweden, but in Norway, poverty is spreading. And this country, which has been upheld as some sort of ideal for how to run a country, is now breaking down. So as sad as that is, there are reasons for why this is happening. There are reasons for why things get more and more expensive every year. And if you have come to believe that this is just how the economy works, I'm here to remove the disinformation from your mind. I'm here to restore clear thinking, because it's not supposed to be like this. In a free market capitalist system, it wouldn't be like this. But we don't live in a free market capitalist system, and that is maybe mind-blowing to you. A lot of people think that we do. They attack capitalism because they think that that is the source for all of our problems. The truth is that we live in a quite different system, and that inflation comes from the way that this system is being manipulated by pushing more and more money into it. We live in a system that is basically run by a form of money magic, where money can be created out of thin air. And that can be done through central banks printing more money, or it can be done by normal banks that create more money through something called fractional reserve banking. Both of these mechanisms in the market create money out of nothing, and that money leads to a shift in the balance of the market, because now there's more money to go around for the same amount of products and services. And in a typical market dynamic, the market and the prices in the markets are governed by supply and demand, right? And now, if there's more demand because there's more money and the supply is the same, then what happens? Things actually cost more money. If supply were to increase through increased productivity, then the price may reduce again, but that's not necessarily the case. And so then, in a typical free market capitalist system, in the supply and demand equation, the price of a product is determined by how available that product is, the quality of the product, the amount of competing businesses and providers of that product or service, and also how many people want it. And then that is tilted and twisted by the infusion of more money into the system. So this happened in a big way over the COVID pandemic, when the governments around the world used fake science to produce fear and to then argue that you needed to create a lockdown in the society. If you are somebody who were highly in agreement of that, and you're now struggling with the economy, I want you to know that it's because of the lockdown. So maybe you felt safer because everyone was basically in jail, but at the same time, your money was demolished. Because in order to manage the huge impact on the economy that happened over the lockdown period, the central banks had to print a lot more money. That created inflation, and inflation doesn't necessarily kick in immediately. And so what we're living in now is the echo effects, the aftershock of that introduced liquidity in the markets. So what seems to be a gift initially actually ends up biting you in the ass. And that is a lot of the time how the economy works. For somebody who is tending left politically, you are very much in support of handouts from the government. You are in support of various kinds of welfare systems and various ways to just help people. And while that's nice to help people, when you understand inflation, you realize that in the end, if you don't keep some of these mechanisms in check, you actually end up hurting everyone. And that's where we are now. There's been so much handouts from governments that you have way less money. Way less money. And that's the problem, because now you can't take care of your family in the same way. And anyone who has a basic education in the economy, in private economy, but also the macroeconomy, they understand this. But the financial system, they have created a language that makes it really hard to understand the very basics of the economy. And so they make it appear as if inflation is just it's like a natural law. It's like physics, the physics of the economy. But that's not the case. It's thanks to this money magic that only benefits the people in power. That's why inflation happens. And that's a problem. And that's why you need to get educated. And that's why we're here. Because I want you to be a steward of your family and awaken that heroic impulse and become a lion that sees through all of the propaganda and the disinformation so that you can take care of yourself, your family, your loved ones, and the world. So we can go more into central bank printing of money and fractional reserve banking at a later stage. You could look that up right now and you can see how money is created out of thin air by like magic, thus increasing all of the prices for you and ruining your private economy. But there are ways then that you can do this. So over the last, there are ways in which you can protect yourself from this. That's what I meant to say. Over the last 100 years, the US dollar has depreciated its purchasing power by 97%. That means that something that cost $10 in 1924 now costs more than $300. That's thanks to inflation. And this is the US dollar, which has been the reserve currency throughout most of this period. So if that has happened to the US dollar, then just imagine what has happened to like smaller currencies around the world, small cap currencies in, shall we say, developing countries. They have been absolutely demolished. So if the purchasing power of the dollar has reduced by 97%, you could see that the purchasing power elsewhere has reduced by 99%, or 99.9%, or 99.99999%. I'm not exaggerating. This has happened in countries like Zimbabwe, where inflation has been absolutely sky high. It also happened in Germany after the Second World War, where people had to have wheelbarrows of money to buy bread. You have probably heard the story. And so, what have people done who were in the know to become richer in this period? Of course, they have bought physical things. Because physical things have intrinsic utility. And that means that they will typically always be in demand by the people who require that particular utility. So, say for instance, gasoline. You need gasoline because it's energy, and energy is the most important thing that you have in any society. You could even argue that money is a kind of energy. And so then, you will buy things that are durable, which would not cover oil and gasoline, because that reduces in the quality of that particular product reduces over time. But for instance, gold and silver, and this is also why people have been buying real estate, because it has been maintaining value. It hasn't been the case that real estate has boomed. What has happened is that the houses are physical objects that have utility and that people will always need, and so the money or the value of homes has remained. But of course, there has been a lot of manipulation of the real estate market as well, and so it's in a bubble now, and it will actually crash most likely next year. But nevertheless, the important thing for you to understand is that there is a way in which people over these last hundreds of years, they buy objects in order to defeat inflation. And this is why in times of great inflation, people buy gold and silver. And you may have done that already. And it's also why when inflation gets really extreme, people don't want to hold on to money. They want to buy things. They want to go out immediately when they get their paycheck and buy food. And as inflation keeps on increasing, you will probably find that this is what people increasingly will do. They will want to buy things immediately because otherwise it will be more expensive. As of right now, inflation appears to have been come under control, but this is basically an illusion in large part that is created because there are presidential elections coming up in the US. And so the sitting administration needs to manipulate the markets in order to appear as if they got the economy under control. And then the plug will be pulled in 2025. And so it's just like this. We're just pushing it ahead of us until the whole thing collapses. And that will happen probably not very far after the presidential elections. So this is probably enough for today, and there's way more to talk about, and we will talk about it because I want you to win. I want you to be able to steward your family to a place of thriving even in times of transition and systemic collapse. I do, and I want that for myself. And in some part, I'm creating these videos because of my own educational project, because I need to understand these mechanisms even better for you to understand what I'm saying, right? And so we will do this together. We will rise together. But for now, what I want you to be mindful of as inflation keeps stealing your money and distributing them to big corporations and oligarchs and all these things, and how exactly that happens, we haven't had the time for today, but I will hopefully cover that later. Just know that when you buy physical objects that have actual utility, that will not diminish in time, over time, it probably will increase over time, such as silver. Silver will appreciate, or the utility of silver is that it works, or it's an important mineral metal in industry and renewable energy production and so on and so forth. It's an incredible metal with incredible properties. And so that will be in higher and higher demand. And so not only will it prevent your money from being ravaged by inflation, but there will also be greater demand for it. And so a metal like silver is likely going to be an incredible place to invest over these next years. And of course, silver has appreciated greatly, and I will speak to the various reasons for that and what we are doing as a family inside of the conversation of investing in commodities over actual fiat currency. So there's a lot we're going to cover over these next videos, but I hope this has been helpful and that you got some out of it. And if you want to thrive and have the capacity to steward your family, to lead your family into thriving as our systems collapse, then I hope you help me by liking this video, helping the algorithm, and that you will subscribe to the channel, because there's going to be a ton more of this coming in the next days, weeks, and months. So thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time to learn more about the economy so that you can take care of the people that you love. Have a great day, and I'll see you soon.